Welcome to MS Money and Mayhem. If you want to know why I called my channel that, it's because that's pretty much what I'm going to be talking about. So I have been an MS warrior for 17 years, nearly 18 years now. I have, I did have relapsing remitting MS. I've just kind of moved into smouldering era. Quite liked the sound of that. They normally call it PERA, which is progression independent of relapse activity. I prefer smouldering, it sounds quite sexy, and I'm way too fabulous for anything boring, so I'm going to just stick with the smouldering. But yeah, I've had MS for 17, nearly 18 years. On the money side, I have my own business and I work as an on-demand business partner. So I support people who are running a business by themselves and I step in and just offer an extra pair of hands. My actual qualifications are around finance and accounting, operations and HR, but I will get stuck in and do anything. So whether that is kind of embracing AI, whether it's looking at sequencing and automation, whether it is sales, marketing, I do a little bit of everything. On the mayhem side, that's kind of just the constant theme in my life. So at the moment, I am currently dealing with gallbladder disease. Not fun, would not recommend. I've got some gallstones and a build-up of biliary sludge, which sounds disgusting. I'm sure it looks horrific. And then because of the issues with my gallbladder, it's then knocked on into pancreatitis, and then I have a slightly inflamed liver. So I'm just in a lot of pain at the moment, which is why I'm kind of sitting with my legs up and not sat at my computer chair because it's not comfortable. So I'm getting through it as best as I can at the moment. So yeah, so MS, money, mayhem. I will do different videos about different things. If there is anything in particular that you would like me to cover, feel free to get in touch, drop me a message and let me know. I want it to be a fun channel. I don't take life too seriously. I am also not corporate, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am this all singing, all dancing corporate business advisor. That is not my style. It's not what I do. I just give really honest advice that is based on 20 plus years of experience. So when I'm saying to you, look, these are the things that could happen, I'm not saying it as a, well, it could do. I'm saying this is what's happened in the past, and it could be that this happens to you. So I always give very, very honest advice. Might not be what you want to hear, but it's always honest. Now, I get asked quite a lot where the Viking thing comes from. I would love to sit here and say to you that it's because I studied Norse mythology, or that, I don't even know randomly how I could have fallen across it in any other way. But I do love Norse mythology. I have done since I was a kid. I remember going to like this weird little Viking village when I was in primary school, and I got to build a longship out of clay. I did get told off during that day trip because apparently I took the day too seriously, and when the adult Vikings came to attack our village, as a woman, apparently I was supposed to run back to my house that I had been building, and I was supposed to protect my house, and I didn't. I picked up one of the wooden swords and I nearly took an eye out of one of the invading Vikings. So there was no such thing as a naughty step back then, but I did have to do a timeout while I thought about what it was that I'd done. And when my teacher came back and spoke to me and said, what have we learnt from this, Kirsty? And I said, well, I think that you have, massively underestimated me as a girl and thought that because I was a girl that I couldn't fight, but, I think that man would disagree with you. So I'm not necessarily sure that I actually learned my lesson there, but I did defend my village, and I'd put a lot of effort into that whole kind of wattling and daubing, whatever it's called, where, like you put some sticks on your roof and then you start putting mud and stuff all over it. I worked really, really hard on that house, so I was going to protect it at any cost. And obviously I did, and then, got told off for it. But yeah, so the actual Viking thing came not from, anything particularly impressive. It was when Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out. I'm actually a massive nerd. I'm a huge gamer. I did like a good kind of 15 years playing World of Warcraft. I love the Assassin's Creed games. And when Valhalla came out, I put, a good couple of 100 hours into that game. It was just amazing. And then I kind of got to the end of it and I was like, this is it. I am a Viking now. I was completely born in the wrong time, and I don't care what anyone says. I'm definitely Viking spirit and energy. That's who I am. So it was kind of a bit of a joke at my old work, and everyone just used to kind of say, "Oh yeah, Kirsty, yeah, she thinks she's a Viking," and it just kind of became like a thing. And then when it came around to Halloween, and we were all like dressing up in fancy dress for the office, obviously I dressed up as a Viking. And then after work, we all went out for drinks, and everyone was like, "Are you seriously going out dressed like that?" I was like, "Yes. I don't want to take this outfit off any earlier than I have to, so I will only be taking it off when I get home and go to bed." So I did really, really embrace the whole Viking thing. But before, like, obviously all of that happened, I have always been, kind of a bit of a warrior. So when I was a kid, my nickname was Kirsty Warrior because I would get myself involved. So if there was a kid that was being bullied, or there was something that was happening at school that I didn't agree with, I was very verbal, and I would go in there and I would say my piece. I've always had a really strong sense of justice and a really strong moral compass. So I can kind of, if I see something that's wrong, I can't just walk away from it. And sometimes it has got me into trouble, but I just don't like, I always think that if I don't do something to help, then I'm part of the problem. And I don't know whether that's upbringing, I don't know whether it's personality, I don't know what it is. Sometimes I wish I wasn't like that, but I am. And so I was Kirsty Warrior. Then obviously I got MS and I became Kirsty the MS Warrior. And then obviously I set up my own business with this whole Viking theme, and now I'm just known as the Viking, which was hilarious because last year I had a stand at an expo, the SAM Expo at the Huddersfield Cedar Court, and this woman came over to me, and she had been in a different room and was talking about her business, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for like a business coach or a business advisor." And whoever it was that she'd spoken to had said, "Oh, you need to go speak to the Viking." But obviously hadn't thought, "Oh yeah, I'll tell her that she's called Kirsty." It was just so natural for him to just go, "Yeah, you need to go speak to Kirsty the Viking." Or go speak to the Viking. So she turned up at my stand, and then like there's me, like 5'4". She walked over and she went, "Sorry, are you the Viking?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I am, yeah." So we started chatting. And then when she'd walked away, I was like, I obviously wasn't at all what she was expecting. Now, I don't know what she was expecting. Maybe it was like some powerlifting woman that throws axes on a weekend. I have no idea. But whatever it is that she was expecting, it quite clearly wasn't me. And then we were talking, I was talking to the person on the stand next to me. And he turned round to me and he went, "I'm not going to lie. I think you'd have made a pretty rubbish Viking because you're not very intimidating. You're not very frightening. And I don't even think you'd be able to lift an axe, would you? Or a shield?" And I was like, no, I don't think I would. And the more I've thought about this since, I'm like, actually, yeah, I would make a really, really rubbish Viking because I wouldn't be able to pick up an axe or a shield. I think they'd be way too heavy for me. But then I'm also like, I'd probably be there and we'd be like on the field, ready to go to battle. And I'd be like there at the front, guys and girls ready to go. And I would give an amazing rally speech. Like I would literally have like my entire army riled and ready to go. And I would put so much energy into it. And then I'd be like, "Right, I'm going to go and have a power nap for 20 minutes and I'll see you back here," because I'd be absolutely shattered. So I think physically, not such a great warrior or Viking, but mentally, I definitely have that mindset. And I did actually write a book which I published last year, and it's on Amazon, and it's called How Multiple Sclerosis Changed My Life for the Better. And I did that because I am like the queen of storytelling. I do have some ridiculous stories of things that have happened in my life, and it's funny because I get called the queen of resilience. I've been introduced as that a few times. And I personally don't see it as resilience. I think of it more as kind of just being really stubborn. So I have like this vision of what I want to do and what I want to achieve. And then regardless of how much my life has thrown at me, I just don't let it stop me. It might slow me down, but I don't let it stop me, because ultimately I have this goal of what I want to do and what I want to achieve, and I'm just determined that I'm going to get there come hell or high water. And 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what happens. So I have like this really strong mindset. And you know, it's funny because I get a lot of people in like the health world that'll say to me, oh yeah, but I bet like, you know, you've got like a really clean diet, or I bet like, you know, you do loads of exercise. And I'm sat there and I'm just like, oh God, if only you knew. And I openly will admit, like, I will always be honest with you, I am terrible. So my diet, shocking. I live off Pepsi Max, Quavers, and chocolate buttons. I actually only eat one meal a day, which is my evening meal, and I only eat that because my husband makes me. The rest of the time, I will avoid eating where possible, just because I'm not interested. And then exercise, non-existent. I did do a stint of, I did have a horse for a few years. Sadly, she passed away not last year, but the year before. So I had her for a few years, and I did used to kind of jump on my horse and I'd be in the woods for a couple of hours, you know, galloping around and being an idiot. But you know, in terms of exercise, yeah, just not really interested. So I think I am living proof that mindset makes up for about 80% of actually getting something done, and you know, helping you to get through from A to B. Because for me, it definitely isn't diet, it's definitely not exercise, it's not supplements, there's literally nothing else that I do that could be classed as positive. So I think I am a good advert for mindset. Now, for me, this channel is kind of offering, you know, like support and advice to other people out there who, you know, you might not necessarily have someone that you can talk to. You might not have, you know, somebody who represents like a little bit of positivity or resilience or, you know, positive mindset. And I think that's kind of been the thing for me of, you know, if there's just one person that I can help, then I've achieved my goal. So when I was diagnosed with MS 17 years ago, I just didn't feel like I had anybody that was there to kind of go, oh, no, it's going to be all right, Kirsty, you know, look at this person who's 10 years down the line and she's doing really well, or, you know, I've had it for this many years and look at me. I just didn't have any of that. I was working in healthcare at the time. I was just seeing the worst case scenarios of people with MS. And I just felt like I had to be my own cheerleader and get myself through it, because I didn't have any other option. And then as I did kind of start coming to terms with it all and fighting it, then I started coming across other people that had like either MS or another health condition. And then I started kind of almost like being a disability advocate. And over, I would say, the last kind of 7 or 8 years, I've really, really kind of embraced that and gone with it, and will use any opportunity to educate. So whether it is, you know, somebody stopping me in a car park and saying, do you know, you parked in a disabled bay there? And I think, you know, that's such an ignorant thing to say. But at the same time, if you don't know any better, then, you know, is it really your fault? So then I'll use that as an opportunity to kind of go, well, actually, I have an invisible illness, I've got MS. And then I'll, you know, stand there and take the time to explain it. And usually that's when I get an apology. Although I have had a couple that, you know, have just been really, really rude. And my dad always says you can't play a game, or you can't win a game of chess with a pigeon. So pick your battles. So if I realise that there's no point, then I won't waste my time and I'll walk away. But likewise on the business front, you know, I've gone in, I did 20 years as a turnaround consultant. So I would go in and fix people's businesses. And then now, you know, I kind of focus on supporting people who are running a business by themselves. Most of my clients, their businesses are under 5 or 6 years old. Some of them are like right at the beginning of their journey and don't even know where to start in terms of, should I be self-employed and sole trader? Should I have a limited company? Should I do a charity or a CIC? And then I take them right through from the beginning. And I love that. You know, I don't think there's anything more rewarding really than what I do now. And, you know, it's funny because of the whole MS thing, I always wanted loads and loads of kids. And I remember being about 7, and my priest at the time, because I used to go to church when I was a kid. So my priest at the time had said to me, you know, and do you want children when you grow up, Kirsty? I was like, yeah, I'm going to have 10. And he was like, that's a lot of kids. he was like, are you aware that they take a lot of looking after? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he was like, so you're going to be a stay-at-home mummy? I was like, no, I'm going to be a teacher. And I'm going to work my way through to being a head teacher. Then I might run like a couple of schools. And he was like, right, and who's looking after all of these children for you? I said, I'm going to get a really good husband, and he's going to do all the cooking, all the cleaning, and look after all of my children and have my dinner on the table when I get home. So I definitely had some really, really clear goals. And apart from the kids, I did pretty much achieve that. I do have an amazing husband who does do all the housework and the cooking and everything. And yeah, he's a legend, bless him. But the kid thing was like a really big thing for me, and that took me quite a long time to come to terms with, of deciding not to have kids because I didn't want to bring them into the whole MS situation. And it's a personal choice, lots of people do, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. For me, it was just I couldn't do it. And I think there was like a whole feeling of guilt of, what if I have a kid and then they end up with MS, and then I'm looking at that child and she's like, oh mum, my legs aren't working, and I'm sat there going, yeah, I knew that there was a chance that I could do this to you. I just couldn't do it. And all of these scenarios were just going through my head. And so I sat down and spoke to my husband, and I was like, look, I know you want kids as well, and I love you enough that I won't rob you of that. I won't rob you of the opportunity to be a dad. So if you want to walk away, then I'll make sure no one holds it against you, and I certainly won't hold it against you. But I can't have kids. I can't do it. And then obviously we had like a lot of talks, and then decided that each other was enough for us, and we'd go from there. And then now it's so bizarre. So like I'll go networking, and I don't know why it's like a thing, but I'm going networking and I'm talking about business, and one of the first questions, like literally in the top 5 questions of things that people will ask me, men or women, will be, have you got any kids? And I'm like, why does that make any like difference to my business or how good I am at what I do? But I'm always like really pleasant about it, and I'm like, no kids, or I'll say, no, just a dog and 2 cats. And then one woman, like not that long ago actually, had turned around to me and said, so you haven't got any kids? And I'm like, no. And she was like, but where's your legacy? And I did a podcast actually a few weeks ago, and I was saying the same to her. It was a lady called Leanne that I did the interview with. I said the same to her, and I was like, people ask me where's the legacy, and I say, well, I might not be raising children, but with my work, whether it's being a disability advocate or whether it's like being an on-demand business partner, I'm raising confidence, I'm raising motivation, and I'm raising successful businesses. And I can guarantee you, I am very much a once met, never forgotten, because I'm just weird. And I'm like the queen of storytelling. So within like an hour of meeting me, you'll have heard about my entire life story, pretty much like now. And I think people, it takes a long time to forget me. So I was like, I've had like such a massive impact on so many lives that, by the time, when the time comes that I'm not here anymore, my legacy will live on through people telling those stories, and I just envision that like my goal is to have a completely packed out funeral where people sat there laughing about, oh my God, do you remember when she did this? Oh my God, do you remember when she dressed up as a Viking and then thought she wore one for like 5 years? It's all of those really, really random stories, but then also people saying, well, actually, do you know what? When I first met her, my business was really struggling and she turned it around, and I'm so grateful for that. So I have made this impact that will probably last a lot longer than, just having kids. And there's nothing to say that if I had have had kids, well, what's to say that I would have left any more a positive a legacy? So I think everyone's got a different idea about legacy. For me, it's impact. And I very openly talk about that. It wasn't an easy decision to make, and people ask me if I have any regrets, and yeah, absolutely. I'm the first person that, if there's a woman that's just appeared and she's got a baby with her, I'm straight over there for a cuddle. I can't help myself. Absolutely love babies. But I've kind of put a sticking plaster over that kind of grief or pain or whatever you want to call it. And I have a Jack Russell who's currently laid at the side of me fast asleep, who thinks she's the most important thing in the world, and, you know, requires a lot of love and affection. And, you know, for as long as I have her, that kind of covers up the whole wanting to have a baby. So it helps anyway. It does definitely help. So in terms of the channel, I will be doing some different videos around MS, my experiences, and then also some videos around some business advice and anything, you know, that I think might be helpful. But also, you know, this is very much, you know, up to you as well. So if there is anything in particular that you're like, actually, Kirsty, I'd really like to know about this, you know, would you mind doing a video about it? Just drop me a message. And I often get people that worry about, oh, I wanted to ask you about this, but I thought it might be a bit of an uncomfortable subject. I am probably one of the hardest people to offend. I don't hide like things, because I think if it's something that I can talk about that helps somebody else, then I'll do it. So in terms of, you know, even random things like bladder control. So I've had no feeling below my waist for over a decade now. You know, like I spoke about it in my book, I'm very raw, I'm very honest, because I just think there's certain things that people feel like they can't talk about it, or they feel like they can't ask about it. But then actually, it's a really important conversation that somebody could then feel really upset about, struggle to come to terms with it, instead of me just being a little bit more open and going, yeah, do you know what? I've wanted a lady for like 10 years. I'm not bothered. You know, I will openly talk about anything if it means that it helps somebody out there. So I'm not going to be precious about anything. Like I say, really difficult to offend. So, you know, if there is something that you want to say and you're not quite sure how to say it, just spit it out. It's fine. We'll deal with it. So an important message, just to kind of end this video, is, you know, life is really, really hard, and at times it can feel impossible. And regardless of who you are and what you're going through, nobody is going to miraculously come to your rescue. Not in business, not in health, not in life. It's down to you. So you have two choices. You can either fight for what it is that you want, or you can accept less than what you actually deserve. Now, here on this channel and wherever I'm involved, there is no accepting less. As far as I'm concerned, there are only ever two choices, and that is either victory or Valhalla. So stay with me, and let's see what we can achieve together.